So Jordan Peterson, what happened to Jordan Peterson? I saw recently that he got suspended from Twitter, which he called a ban because he got suspended and they said that he would need to delete his tweet, which he references as apologizing, delete his tweet or he's not allowed back on Twitter. So then he posted this video. I'm going to pull it up on my screen right here. Interesting video. I mean, he's in a dark room, kind of a navy blue background. He's wearing a suit, very direct to camera with another side camera going on it. I was actually watching it and I thought it was funny because I actually think he makes really good points. He diagnoses every part of what he said in this tweet and whether, you could justify it as being, harassment, hate speech, or whatever. And it's just, I find it really entertaining. Did you guys see it, Tom?
No, I haven't. What was the tweet? Or are we going to get banned for repeating the tweet?
So the tweet was, remember when pride was a sin and Ellen Page just had her breasts removed by a criminal physician, right? So he was referencing how, being gay used to be a sin for thousands of years, right? So he's like, that's true.
Well, in the sin of pride, right? Conceptually, like I think he's even going farther back than that. Like just the idea of pride itself is considered a sin, biblically speaking, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So then he's like, whatever, and then he referenced, this was the funny part that I thought was funny, how he said Ellen Page, which Ellen Page is the female name. I don't even know who Ellen Page is, by the way. And so I don't even know what he's talking about, but he's referencing how Ellen was a woman when she or he had her breast removed. So he's like, he can't reference Ellen. I don't know what Ellen's new male name was, but he can't say that he had his breast removed because
Elliot,
technically speaking,
it's Elliot Page.
Only Elliot, yeah. So technically speaking, a woman would have breasts, a man wouldn't have breasts, and if a man had breasts, and why did he get them removed and all that? It's just like a play on words, the whole thing, So it's just like, I think it's interesting that gets him. Like I could see also, actually, sorry, I want to back up. I could see why if I was Ellen Page, I don't want someone speaking about my breasts being removed. It's kind of personal. Why are you bringing it up? I guess, but I don't know the story behind the whole thing. I have no idea who even this person was, right? But it does kind of get into this kind of like, what can you or can't you say, right? This is why Elon Musk was, talking about buying Twitter and the censorship on Twitter and what's going on there, right? And it's also interesting that he could post this video on YouTube and not get banned on YouTube, right? Who knows, maybe he will. But I think the whole thing is just interesting to see like what you are allowed or not allowed to say. And then furthermore, on kind of what's going on with Jordan Peterson, I thought this is interesting. He just got a podcast deal with Daily Wire, which is Ben Shapiro's company, which is part of Daily Wire Plus. So it's basically a paid subscription. So we're seeing more podcasters, like celebrity podcasters, doing a paid subscription. I know Dave Chappelle had one. I don't know about that. I feel like it's never a good move. I don't know. Like the Dave Chappelle podcast, I heard about it when it came out. Never hear about it now. There's never anything about it. I don't know what it's about. I don't know why he did it. I don't know how much money they're making from it. Where you look at something like a Joe Rogan, which was just like on YouTube and, it blew up and now it's like the biggest podcast in the world, right? So it's kind of interesting how this podcast, I wonder about whether, being behind a paywall, he can kind of say whatever he wants. And maybe that's kind of what he's going for, just be able to speak and get paid to do that.
Isn't Rogan paywall too? Didn't he get bought by
Shopify?
Shopify?
No, it's not a
Spotify?
paywall. No. Yeah. Spotify, it's actually a big misconception when he first did the deal was that it's always going to be free is what the deal was.
It is free, but they pulled some of the stuff from YouTube, interestingly enough, too. So that's not, it's not the same thing. And that was, I guess, more of a strategic play with Spotify. But you can't, I don't think you can find all his content on YouTube anymore either, which is kind of interesting.
Anywhere, they pulled tons of episodes.
Yeah.
Someone was tracking it.
Yeah.
I know there were people tracking it on how many episodes actually got removed.
Honestly, I think this is one of the hardest things to do as a platform owner. I've been thinking about this because I'm building some software, Candid, which is, a platform where creators will monetize their videos. And I'm thinking, well, what if someone puts up naked videos or says something in a video that for some people it's highly offensive and for other people it's just free speech. And you as the owner of the platform kind of define, you're like the arbiter of what is appropriate. And like some people love Jordan Peterson, and I've come across probably more women that do not like Jordan Peterson a lot. And it's impossible. You can't please all the people all the time. I was actually looking into how decentralized social media might allow decentralized moderation as well. And the idea, like a tweet like that goes up, and then like Reddit, it's got the upvote, the downvote. So it could be surfaced, but then it could be pushed down. But there's risk with that too, because you can get the mob of one side pushing down or pushing up some content just because they have numbers. So this is difficult. I don't have an answer for it. I feel like this particular example, if another person, like if you posted about Ellen Page in the same way on your Twitter, I doubt you're going to get suspended or removed.
No, because I don't. Yeah, because it has a lot to do with his status.
Yeah, and his existing controversy already.
It. Right.
And
but
size of his
now
audience
that they did
too,
that,
right?
Yeah, but now that they did that, now that story's bigger. I would not have heard about it if they had not banned him. I was listening to Joe Rogan was on what's his name's podcast
Lex Fridman.
recently. Lex Fridman's, and he was talking about during that time in January 2022 when he was kind of getting canceled, that his show had never grown faster. He did over 2 million more subscribers during that time. So by kind of trying to cancel people, around these sort of topics, it's just giving it more exposure, right?
Yeah, but what about some of these actors who've been canceled recently, like Kevin Spacey? I think his canceling has had way more negative effects on his career versus, say, Joe Rogan, where no such thing as bad news. He's getting more subscribers. He gets, more revenue. So,
right. But Kevin Spacey did something wrong.
Yeah, wasn't he
said something wrong?
I think his was like a sexual assault kind of
it
thing.
was. Yeah, apparently, allegedly.
Okay.
So that was
assaulting
allegedly
many men. So.
Yeah, it was allegedly. So that's the difference. Is being it's like words.
So it's the deed itself,
and it's
right?
not
how
like
far
it was
does
a
it go
direct.
And what?
Yeah, because this is an interpretation of the words, right? So it's whatever someone says, the meaning is filtered through your mind, and then that's what the meaning is. You know what I mean? Like everyone can interpret things in different ways, right? So it's kind of it's really kind of this psyche of the world is so weird right now, where people want to interpret things in a certain way and say this is right and that's wrong.
And it's country to country
and
too.
It's just
yeah, true. But it's funny because it's I almost feel like my perspective on this almost is I try to project 10, 20 years in the future and look back on it. I think free speech online will be a historical footnote when we look back on the 80s, 90s, because it was pushed so hard at that time. Free speech, whatever. And now you just see the gates shutting and the platforms that control it. It's a couple things to understand, and this is relevant to creators. You don't control these platforms. You do not have free speech on these platforms. They control the narrative however they want to. And, to that point, it's by shutting them down, all of a sudden that tweet gets more exposure. But Twitter, they don't care. That's not the point. They're playing a very different game than you and I. Their game's very different. But that's why I think you're seeing a lot of creators move to their own platforms and I think that's a huge opportunity, right now. If you were an entrepreneur or something like that, or a software creator, to build platforms that are outside of these platforms, to be able to host and host these banned, dissenting opinions and things like that. Listen, I know that treads a certain, we don't even have to get into where that treads, that line that treads, but it's almost the point that if you, especially comedians too, you just see there's so many that have been banned in the last few years, but they're starting their own platforms, they're doing their own things. It's almost like something you have to account for. So if you're going to be on these mainstream platforms, YouTube, Twitter, whatever, it's get it while the getting's good, but then you got to move off and build your own platform. I think that's ultimately the if there's a lesson to be learned, it's you must be able to communicate with your platform, your audience directly. Otherwise, those, especially if you're controversial, those gates will be shut. And even if you're not controversial, you just say something in passing. I know some people recently in the last year who've been knocked off huge platforms because of just one offhanded comment. So it can happen pretty lightning quick.
I remember recently watching one of those documentaries about the history of video games, and they were talking about how, you guys probably remember this, in the 90s, there was a lot of legal cases on violence in games. Mortal Kombat was one that kind of triggered sort of a political, what do you call it, like investigation into it. And I remember looking at that going, oh my gosh, Mortal Kombat is tame compared to what we'll now see in a video game or in, you know, a lot of media. And I feel like the sort of the arc of what we find acceptable opens up more and more over time. Like, you know, we get a little bit numb to it maybe, but what also has happened is these platforms have become so global, so distributed, so open, anyone can do anything. Yet we've got parts of society, like I try to think about teenagers now and how you know, the school rumor yard was hard enough when it wasn't spread through Snapchat, right? Like someone said this about you and you're like, oh my gosh, they said that about me. That's, and you know, you would sink as a teenager thinking that other people are talking about you. And now you'll be in your face on a YouTube video, or maybe not YouTube, on a TikTok or a Snapchat or whatever. And that is not good. Like, and I feel like there's the pendulums that swing. Like it opens up more, and then there's consequences of it opening up, and then we have to try and adapt to it. And then there's cancel culture and platforms trying to control things. But then it gets to the point where it influences political elections. Like, for example, I was watching the Philippines election just recently, and I think it's Marcos just got into power, and he's the son or the grandson of a dictator in the Philippines. So
right.
I was trying to come up with an example that makes this relevant. This is too strong, but it's kind of like as if Hitler's grandson now became the chancellor of Germany. So 2 generations ago, they wouldn't touch. They know this horrible person. They had uprisings. People died to get rid of this leader and force him out. But then enough time passes that his grandson gets into power. And it's primarily because the grandson was able to make use of social media and just spread this message among the youth of how effective he will be as a leader and how he'll make their lives better. And they don't have a memory of what the family did in the past. So it's kind of creating a very dangerous situation where social media can be the arbiter of what is right or wrong simply because someone's better at making a viral video or not. So I think it does head to dangerous places, but I don't think it's going to stop. I think it's going to become more open. Guys like Jordan Peterson can say anything and it's going to be okay, because that's what's going to happen with decentralized platforms. There'll be somewhere they can say it and not get canceled. I just don't know how far that goes when it comes to politics and safety of our children, free speech, all that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's getting too extreme, you know, like the censorship is too much, that it's becoming unclear of like what should be censored and what should not be. Before it was like, you know, hate speech is hate speech and that's it, right? If someone threatens to murder somebody or says something really direct, you know, a direct attack, you know, that kind of stuff I could agree with, you know, but when they're censoring this where it's kind of an abstract opinion.
It's all the wrong think stuff. I mean, straight up, like I've read a lot of his, you know, I mean, it's got 1984-esque, you know, patterns to it. Let's be real. It's like, this is double plus good, you know, at the end of the day, like this is wrong think. And that's where it's going. But again, I look at that, I'm like, what are you going to do? Like, I'm very pragmatic that way. I'm like, you know, it's like, what are you going to do? You don't control these platforms. So you got to get on your own. You got to find, you know, if you have things to say, you got to figure out a way to say them somewhere else. Then.
I think that's what's going to happen. We're going to each have our platform and we're going to have a lovely echo chamber that reinforces our beliefs. And, you know, it'll be who has the biggest platform in reality, because they'll have bigger numbers. And that's unfortunately when people get persecuted. And, you know, we see it in countries where there's 3 religions, one dominant one, you know, 2 smaller ones. The 2 smaller ones don't have as much power and often, you know, get persecuted. So what we really need to do is kind of, I don't know, we need to come up with I always think of the golden rule. We're getting very philosophical and religious here, but, you know, do unto others what you would have do unto yourself. And if there was a way to just universally apply that, and I kind of think of this and go, all right, Jordan Peterson saying this about my body, if he was following the golden rule, would that be considered appropriate? Like, he might say, I don't care if someone says that about me, where someone else would say, no, you're violating my body and I don't like it. So unfortunately, even something as seemingly as effective as the golden rule doesn't, you know, cut across and solve every problem.
Yeah, I actually don't agree with what he said, that he should have said it or anything. I wouldn't defend what he said, because it is kind of like why, like, it is technically an attack. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like, what's the relevance of why say it, But to like kind of suspend him or ban him, like they would have given him like a 7-day suspension, something like that, would have made kind of more sense to that, because it's still his opinion and he's entitled to, Twitter's about saying what's on your mind.
But it's not.
So whatever he wants.
That's the thing. That's what it claims to be, but it's not.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's the thing. We have to
Exactly,
make a differentiation between that now. Like, and again, I know we're getting to the philosophical territory, but like, it might say it is, but it's not. Like, there's things it's wrongthink. And if it's wrongthink, then it's not allowed.
Yeah.
And like, so then to that point, that tweet, it kind of made me laugh, because I was like, what is that tweet? What is the point of that tweet? But that's what was funny to me when I heard it. But I'm like, and again, it's what do you expect too? Like, of course, that's what's going to happen. You're going to get slapped on the wrist. You're going to be put in timeout. You get put in the cage, or you get kicked off the platform entirely. Like, it's already well known. Like, there's places you're not allowed to go. You're not allowed to say certain things. And then you can bring up the point, well, there's all this like pornography on Twitter and all this nonsense on it and all this other stuff. Yeah, okay. That's their platform though. That's how they roll. I think we don't have to pretend that they're somehow being equitable. Like, they're not.
Right.
It's just not.
Yeah, that's right.